Hello, lovelies. Today I am reading All the Young Dudes by MsKingBean89. I'm reading chapter 29, second year of December Moon. I hope you guys enjoy. Chapter 29, second year, December Moon. The Hogwarts Express left Hogsmeade Station for Christmas on Saturday, 16th December that year, meaning that once the full moon had passed, James, Sirius, and Remus had to find their other means of getting to the Potter's family home. McGonagall had, after lecturing Remus on not letting any other students in on his secret, was sympathetic to the Marauders' wishes, and allowed them to use the Floo connection in her office just this once. Remus didn't mind the lecture so much, but he was terrified of using the Floo network for the first time. He'd heard all sorts of horror stories from fellow students, and it didn't help that he was usually queasy for a few days after the full moon anyway. Sirius received a howler every morning after the 16th, demanding that he come home at once, but he simply tossed the scarlet envelope into the fireplace, while Perga's black screams echoed up into the chimney stacks. James was clearly unnerved by this behavior, but didn't say anything. Sirius was always up for a fight lately, and it was just better to steer clear. Unfortunately, as the full moon drew nearer, Remus also had a very short fuse. The two boys bickered over anything and everything, and poor James had to step between the pair more than once. "Just write back to her, for God's sake," Remus growled in the morning of the 20th, throwing a pillow at Sirius from his bed. He'd been woken up early for the third morning in a row by a howler. "If you think you can escape your birthright in this cowardly fashion, you have another thing coming," it wailed, echoing through Gryffindor Tower like a banshee. "Stay out of it, Lupin." Sirius flung his pillow back at him. "How am I supposed to stay out of it when it's in our bloody bedroom every morning?" Remus growled, getting up now. "I'm so sorry to inconvenience you," Sirius retorted, dripping with sarcasm. He looked rough, as if he hadn't slept properly at all. But Remus was in too much of a bad mood to care, and his transformation was only hours away. "How about not acting like a spoiled little brat for 5 minutes?" he snapped. "You're so bloody selfish." "I'm not asking her to send them. At least I actually get posts. At least people care enough of me to." Remus threw himself on top of Sirius and began thumping him as hard as he could, incandescent with rage. "Shut up," he grunted, landing a decent punch right on Sirius's left cheek. Sirius, though extremely adept at caustic insults, was not much of a fighter. He gasped and tried to push Remus away, eventually grabbing for his wand. "Mordio," he hissed, aiming at Remus's face. At once, Remus let go, tumbling backwards onto the bed, clutching his forehead. A horrible stinging sensation radiated from the spot Sirius had cursed. "You wanker!" he yelled, feeling his face tighten and swell up. "You deserved it." "Sirius!" James had clambered out of bed too late. "You cursed him? You bloody cursed him?" Sirius was looking less sure of himself now. He started it. He didn't even have his wand on him. Remus had climbed off the bed and was staring at himself in the wardrobe mirror. He looked as though he had rolled through a stinging nettle bush backwards. His skin was red and shiny, taut and swelling at a worrying rate. "Does it hurt?" James asked tentatively. Remus shook his head, though it did. "A lot. I'm going to the hospital wing," he said. "Don't come with me," he snapped, seeing James pulling on his dressing gown. As he marched out of the room, still in his own pajamas, he heard James mutter, "Attacking someone who's unarmed is really fucking low back." Madame Pomfrey healed him quickly, using the counter jinx, but she was very annoyed about it. "Who did it?" she asked him. "If it was Potter or Black, then I want to hear about it. I told Minerva it was a bad idea to let you go away for Christmas." "Why shouldn't I go?" Remus seemed scandalized. "Sirius is going." "Mr. Black doesn't have your limitations." "But we're not going till tomorrow. It's right after the full moon. That's the safest. I'm thinking of your health, Remus. You're very fragile." "I am not fragile." Remus seethed. "Of course not, dear," she said, not really listening to him. "Now sit there quietly for a bit. Have you had breakfast?" Madame Pomfrey made him stay in the hospital wing all day in his pajamas. The Mediwitch had been working on a new potion that she hoped might make his transformation smoother. She let him borrow some of her books, so it wasn't too bad, but he felt like an invalid all the time. His face was still a bit tingly from Sirius's curse, though the swelling had gone down substantially. It had been a good one to use on the snake. He made a mental note to remember to ask Sirius exactly how he'd done it. At about 1 o'clock, just after lunch, James and Sirius came to see him. Madame Pomfrey gave them a sound telling off first. "Cursing your fellow housemate! Cursing your doormate! For goodness sakes, in my day you would have been flogged. And Professor McGonagall has informed me that you know about his special circumstances. One might think you'd have more sense." James made copious apologies, and Sirius, who barely flinched at his mother's obscene chastisements anymore, hung his head looking utterly ashamed. Eventually Remus guessed that this must have been enough to satisfy the school nurse, who allowed them over to see him. They stood at the end of the bed like mourners, barely meeting his eye. "We're really sorry, Remus," James stated. Remus clicked his tongue. "You never did anything." James kicked Sirius, who looked up too. "I'm really sorry, Remus." He had a heavy dark bruise high on his left cheek, and his eyes looked a little overbright. Remus wondered if Sirius had cried about it. The thought made him feel funny. He shook his head, no longer angry. "I started it. Sorry I hit you. Sorry about the howler. Sorry your mom's a nightmare. Sorry you're a werewolf." They both laughed, and everything was forgiven. "Will she let you out now?" James asked. "The hours till the moon." Remus shook his head. "Nah, she wants to try some new potion." "I didn't think there was a cure." "There isn't," Remus said quickly. "This is just I think it's to make the transformation, easier." They both looked at him, puzzled. He shifted uncomfortably. "Like a painkiller, I think. Muggle ones don't work." "Does it hurt them?" Sirius asked, cocking his head. Now that the storm had passed, he was back to seeing Remus as an intense specimen. Well, yeah, Remus frowned. He had assumed they knew a lot more than him, having grown up in the wizarding world, so he was surprised that they didn't know about the pain. For a long time, the pain was the only thing he had known. To his surprise and delight, James and Sirius elected to stay in the hospital wing with Remus for the rest of the afternoon. They played a few riotous games of exploding snap, before Madame Pomfrey sternly told them to quiet down, so they switched to capstones. As the evening drew in, they didn't go down for dinner, but ate the same hospital food as he did. This was no great thing for them. James and Sirius treated it as any other afternoon. The hospital bed was just an extension of their dorm. For Remus, it was everything. It was time that would otherwise be spent anxious and alone. It was the closest thing to family he could imagine. McGonagall came and chased them out eventually, ready to lead Remus to the shack. He went peacefully with a small, soft smile on his lips, and the laughter still echoing in his ears. Madame Pomfrey's pain-killing potion had no effect, but Remus found the transformation slightly more tolerable all the same. James and Sirius arrived first thing the next morning. Remus was dozing in his bed, having been brought back into the castle at dawn. His face hurt, and he knew it wasn't from the curse anymore. Madame Pomfrey had left a hand mirror on his bedside table, glass down, but he had been too tired to look yet. He was woken by the sharp gasp of breath, which came from either James or Sirius. He wasn't sure who. When he opened his eyes, they both rearranged their expressions into stoic cheer. "All right, mate?" James said with a half-smile, as he might address a child. "All right," Remus croaked, holding himself up. "It must be bad." He lifted the heavy mirror and turned it towards his face. Ah. The cut looked half-healed already, thanks to Pomfrey's ministrations, but it was still a shock. The scab was hard and black, edged with tender red skin. It stretched from the inner corner of one eye up over the bridge of his nose diagonally down towards the center of his opposite cheek. He shouldn't remember much, but it looked as though he almost split his face wide open. "A beautiful face," he said weakly, attempting sarcasm, but feeling dreadful. Now everyone would know. So far he'd been able to hide the worst scars under his robes, but he knew now that it had only been a matter of time before his luck ran out in that regard. "It's not that bad," James said quickly. "It'll heal really fast, I bet." "How did—" Sirius began, but was interrupted by Madame Pomfrey. He came storming over. "You two back again?" They stepped back sharply, as if frightened of her, showing difference they never showed for McGonagall. The nurse pulled the curtain around Remus's bed, closing it in their faces. "Ah, you've had a look, have you?" She addressed Remus now, in a much softer tone. "I know it looks bad, but it'll pale just like the others. Should be barely noticeable by the new year." Remus somehow didn't believe her. Even his most faded scars were still very noticeable. She took a closer look, then smoothed a clear ointment over the cut. "Take this with you," she instructed, handing him the jar. "Apply every morning and evening. Does it hurt still?" He shook his head. She clucked her tongue skeptically. "Well, even so, it might itch a bit as it heals. Perhaps we should try trimming your nails down next month. Though I suppose the claws come in anyway. She sighed, sounding frustrated. Your face must still be irritated even after you got the swelling down. It's fine, Remus shrugged her off. He was keenly aware of his friends on the other side of the curtain and wanted her to go away. Can I go now? I feel okay. Wouldn't you rather get a bit more sleep? No. He shook his head vehemently. I'm hungry. I want to go down for breakfast. He knew that would work. She was always on to him to eat more. Well, fine. Get rested and off you pop. Sirius was very quiet during breakfast, leaving James and Remus to maintain the conversation, something neither of them had much practice by themselves. Once fed, they went upstairs to pack, because Sirius and Remus had left it to the last minute. James, frustrated by their lack of foresight, marched to McGonagall's office to see if everything was ready for their journey, leaving them to it. Remus packed a few things. He hadn't got the others any presents, and he'd made them all promise not to get him anything either. It wasn't fair. Major had sent ahead a small package, so there was that. He threw in some clothes. The others probably wore robes at home, but the only robes Remus owned were his school uniform, and he wasn't very sure he actually owned that or whether it was just on loan. So he just shoved in his muggle clothes. Packed, Remus turned to Sirius, standing directly behind him, looking even worse than he had the day before. What's up? Remus asked, startled. It's my fault. Sirius replied, his voice strangely flat. I heard Pomfrey say so. Your face. I cursed it. Then when you turned, you scratched it. Oh. Remus raised his fingers to his face, self-consciously. Sirius looked away. It's not really your fault, Remus said awkwardly. I mean, I scratch everywhere else, too. Bound to happen eventually. Why do you do it? Sirius had asked that once before, when looking at his old scars. This time, Remus could tell that he really understood what he was asking, but Remus still didn't have an answer. I don't know. I don't remember. You really don't remember anything at all. Not really. I know I'm always hungry, like I've been starving all my life, and angry. About what? Remus shook his head. Just angry. I'm so sorry, Remus. Sirius looked sad again. Remus couldn't bear it. Oh, shut up, he said, half joking. You wouldn't think twice about cursing James or Peter. Yeah, but Don't say it. He'd been afraid this might happen. Please don't treat me like I'm sick, or different, or whatever. It's one night of the month. If I punch you, you're allowed to curse me, okay? Sirius looked like he wanted to laugh. Are you saying you're planning to punch me again? Remus threw a sock at him. If you don't sort out those bastard howlers, maybe. Traveling by Floo powder was nothing compared to feeling your own spine elongate every month, and Remus wasn't sure what all the fuss had been about. He was the second step to the fireplace into the Potter's Lounge after James. Brushing the soot from his shoulders, he quickly hopped off the hearthrug to make room for Sirius, and watched as James was pulled into a hearty embrace by both of his parents. Mr. and Mrs. Potter were quite a bit older than Remus had imagined, but both had kind, merry faces that shared familiar features with their son. Mr. Potter's hair was white as snow, but stuck up in every angle exactly like James's. Mrs. Potter had his winning smile and warm hazel eyes. They both hugged Sirius too, while Remus shrank back, feeling horribly out of place. Finally, Miss Potter turned her sunny smile on him. Thankfully, she did not make to hug him too, perhaps sensing that he was uncomfortable. She simply nodded at him gently. "Hello, Remus. We've heard ever so much about you. I'm so glad you're spending Christmas with us." Remus smiled shyly, but couldn't bring himself to speak. It didn't matter. James and Sirius were chattering 19 to a dozen with Mr. Potter, who looked like a schoolboy himself, eyes twinkling with fun and mischief. The sitting room, Remus supposed it was the sitting room, as it had 3 sofas in it, was the biggest he'd ever been in, with wide, tall windows letting in a soft winter sunlight that pulled onto the polished hardwood floors. A gigantic tree stood in one corner, glimmering with silver dust and surrounded by a mountain of brightly wrapped presents. Paper chains and streamers were draped across the ceiling and along picture rails, and even the magical portraits had decorated their frames with fairy lights as they were led through the house. For goodness sakes, Fremont, let the boys put their things away before you start planning. Whatever it is, I know you're planning. He found that every room, even the hallways, were decorated with lights, tinsel, and hundreds of festival cards. Potters must be very popular wizards indeed. They were certainly wealthy. The sweeping mahogany staircase continued up 3 more flights. James's bedroom was big enough for all 3 of them, bigger than their dorm room at Hogwarts, with a king-sized 4-poster bed, but Remus was surprised to find that there were 4 equally large rooms which were occupied. Sirius had already claimed the one next to James, so Remus put his bag in the 3rd room, wondering what it would be like to sleep alone for the first time. "Come on then, lads," Mr. Potter yelled from the stairs in a booming voice. "It's been snowing all afternoon, and I've got the toboggans ready." Well, that was chapter 29. I hope you enjoyed it and are taking care of yourselves, eating 3 meals a day and 64 ounces of water a day. Stay hydrated. Hydrate or die straight, or if you are part of the LGBT community, hydrate or die straight. I love that joke. Anyways, remember to take care of yourselves. If you would like to, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment on what I should read next. Oh my gosh, I actually need you guys to comment on what I should read next. I need inspiration. I did not upload on Thursday because I had no inspiration for anything to read, because it was either too long to put into one thing, or it was just I'm looking for general audience things. Anyways, thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. I love you all, and have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.